It's November 2024, and something strange is happening across the United States. Despite Donald Trump's recent victory, the very people who helped propel him to the presidency, his fervent supporters, are now questioning their decision. Across deep red states, voter regret has started to surface in ways that are impossible to ignore. Google searches asking if voters can change their vote after the election have spiked, with many regretting their choices as they face the consequences of Trump's promises that have failed to materialize. The disillusionment among Trump's base is growing. From economic promises that never came to fruition, to the dismantling of healthcare, to his handling of the pandemic, Trump's supporters are beginning to realize that the reality of his presidency is far from what they were led to believe. For those who voted for him, it's not just disappointment. They're starting to experience the painful reality of their political decisions. This is a story of how Trump's broken promises are now haunting his base, especially in the states that were the most loyal to him. It's a reckoning that's just beginning to unfold. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the rise of regret among Trump supporters, particularly in those deep red states that backed him in the 2024 election. We'll look at why so many people are now asking whether they made the right choice and explore the consequences they're facing as a result. We'll also analyze the broken promises that have led to this widespread regret, from healthcare and economic policy to immigration and international relations. 1. The search for answers. Can voters change their vote? Since Election Day, there's been a curious phenomenon taking place. Many Trump voters are turning to Google to ask, "Can I change my vote after the election?" These searches have been particularly high in states that were staunchly red, places like Wisconsin, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Idaho, and beyond. Voters who had supported Trump are now trying to figure out if there's any way to undo their choice. But the simple truth is, it's too late. The ballots are in, the results are certified, and there's no turning back. The consequences of their vote are now coming home to roost. The Google searches, which were initially high after Trump's victory, have surged once again as people realize that the promises they believed in, promises of healthcare reform, economic growth, and an America First approach, have largely failed to materialize. This growing regret isn't limited to a handful of people. It's a widespread issue among Trump's base. And it's especially prominent in swing states and areas that went red in 2024, states that once seemed like staunch pillars of support for the former president. 2. Broken healthcare promises. The impact of Trump's rhetoric on Obamacare. One of the most glaring examples of Trump's broken promises lies in the realm of healthcare. In the years since Trump took office, he repeatedly promised to repeal and replace Obamacare. Yet, despite making this promise countless times, Trump never delivered. He never offered a real plan. His administration made countless attempts to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, ACA, and his supporters believed that Trump would come through with a better system. But when the dust settled, it was clear that Trump's healthcare plan was nothing but empty rhetoric. In 2024, many Trump voters are facing the painful reality of their choices. A prime example can be seen in a post from a Trump supporter who expressed regret after voting for him. This individual, who had once celebrated Trump's promise to repeal Obamacare, found themselves in a dire situation. They were unemployed and dependent on the ACA for health coverage. But Trump's policies, supported by the very voters who now regret their decision, threatened to strip away the health care that was keeping them alive. This voters' regret is shared by many who, when they voted for Trump, did not fully grasp the consequences of his anti-ACA stance. In fact, many Trump supporters still don't understand that the ACA and Obamacare are one and the same. One online exchange perfectly captures this confusion, with a Trump supporter claiming that Obamacare was separate from the ACA, when in fact they are one and the same. When it was pointed out to them that Obamacare was the very program they relied on, they blamed Democrats for their situation. This is the price of political ignorance, a dangerous byproduct of the misinformation spread by Trump and his allies. People voted for Trump without fully understanding the implications of his promises. And now, they're facing the consequences. 3. Economic fallout, the tariff disaster and rising costs. Trump's promises of economic growth have also fallen flat. His bold rhetoric about tariffs and trade policies sounded appealing to his base, but the reality has been much more difficult to swallow. Trump promised that imposing tariffs on foreign goods would protect American businesses and jobs, yet the consequences have been far from what he promised. Instead of stimulating economic growth, his tariffs have led to price hikes across industries, and many Trump voters are feeling the sting. Businesses are already preparing for an increase in costs, and consumers will bear the brunt of these higher prices. People in Trump's base, particularly those in deep red states who voted for him in 2024, are starting to realize that the tariffs they supported are causing inflation, not saving jobs. Prices for everything from basic goods to imported electronics are set to rise by 15 to 20%, and for many, these increases will hit them directly in their wallets. Trump's promise of a booming economy now feels hollow as people see their paychecks stretch thinner and thinner. The impact of these tariffs is also being felt in the healthcare sector. High tariffs on imported medical equipment and drugs are driving up costs, and hospitals and clinics are passing these costs on to consumers. Health insurance premiums are rising, and many Americans are finding themselves struggling to pay for essential medical treatments. The very voters who thought Trump's economic policies would benefit them are now learning the hard way that tariffs don't work the way Trump said they would. They are, in fact, contributing to rising inflation and higher costs of living. 4. The immigration trap, a reckoning for Latino voters. Another group that is beginning to feel the sting of Trump's broken promises is Latino voters. Many Latinos, particularly those living in states like Florida and Arizona, supported Trump in 2024, believing that his promises of law and order would protect them from the brunt of his immigration policies. But as the reality of his administration's policies begins to take shape, Latino voters are facing a harsh reality. Trump's rhetoric on immigration has been disastrous, to say the least. His promises to deport criminals and troublemakers have turned into sweeping efforts to remove large swaths of the Latino population, including law-abiding citizens and undocumented workers who are essential to the economy. Some of the very people who thought they would be safe under Trump's leadership are now realizing that his immigration policies don't discriminate. They affect everyone, including them. In fact, many Latino voters who voted for Trump are now expressing regret as they see more and more deportations and harsh policies that target their community. They are beginning to understand that Trump's stance on immigration is not just an attack on illegal immigrants, but on all Latinos. 5. The bitter aftertaste of voter regret. Trump supporters, particularly in deep red states, are waking up to the bitter reality that they voted for a man who lied, misled, and delivered on few, if any, of his promises. As healthcare costs rise, as tariffs cause inflation, and as immigration policies hit families hard, many of them are realizing that their vote for Trump was a vote for chaos, division, and hardship. But here's the thing. It's too late now. The people who voted for Trump are stuck with the consequences of their decisions. They made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. The buyer's remorse is palpable, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. As we look back at the 2024 election, we see a clear pattern. Trump's promises were nothing more than empty words meant to manipulate and deceive his base. And now, as the effects of his presidency start to materialize, Trump's supporters are waking up to the reality of their decisions. They're experiencing buyer's remorse, and they're finally realizing that the man they voted for didn't have their best interests at heart. The rise in regret across deep red states is a stark reminder of the dangers of misinformation, political ignorance, and the power of populist rhetoric. Trump promised to drain the swamp, to create jobs, and to deliver a healthcare system that worked for everyone. But in the end, he's left his supporters with higher costs, fewer opportunities, and a broken system that's harder to navigate than ever before. For those who regret their vote for Trump, there's no going back. The damage has been done, and now they have to live with the consequences. And for the rest of us, the lesson is clear. We must remain vigilant against the forces of misinformation and fear that brought Trump to power in the first place. The fight for a better, more equitable future is far from over, and we cannot afford to forget the lessons of the past.